Iran just shot down an American military helicopter. This is not a ceasefire. This is not a negotiation. This is an act of war against the United States Armed Forces. President Trump confirmed it minutes ago on Truth Social. His exact words: "I have just been informed by our great military that last night the Iranians shot down one of our highly sophisticated Apache helicopters while patrolling over the Strait of Hormuz. There were 2 pilots involved, both are safe and uninjured. Nevertheless, the United States must of necessity respond to this attack." Read that again. Must of necessity respond. The President of the United States just told the world that retaliation is coming. He didn't say if, he didn't say maybe, he said must. And now every market, every military commander, every diplomat in every capital on earth is holding their breath waiting to find out what that response looks like. Here is what we know right now. Monday evening at 7:33 p.m. Eastern Time, a U.S. Army A-64 Apache attack helicopter was patrolling the Strait of Hormuz near the coast of Oman when it was brought down. A U.S. official confirmed to NBC News that current indications are that the Apache was shot down by an Iranian drone, not a stray missile, not an accident, a drone, a deliberate weapon aimed at an American aircraft over one of the most strategically critical waterways on the planet. The 2 pilots survived. They were rescued within 2 hours by an unmanned Navy drone boat called the Corsair, a 24-foot vessel operated by Task Force 59, the Navy's first AA-focused maritime security unit. It was the first time in American military history that an uncrewed boat rescued military personnel. The pilots are in stable condition. But here is what that survival doesn't change. Iran just shot down an American Apache helicopter, and Trump just told the world he has to respond. Now let's put this in context, because the context is everything. This didn't happen in a vacuum. This happened on the same day that Iran fired ballistic missiles at northern Israel after Israeli strikes on Beirut. This happened 2 days after Hezbollah and Israel exchanged fire for the first time since the April 8th ceasefire. This happened as peace talks in Pakistan remained stalled. This happened as the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point through which 20% of the world's oil flows, remains effectively closed by Iran. This happened as Trump himself, just last night before he knew about the helicopter, told reporters he believed a deal was reachable in 2 or 3 days. He said the 2 sides were in the final stages of a very, very good deal. Hours later, Iran shot down his helicopter. And this is the central contradiction that nobody in Washington wants to confront directly. Trump has been saying a deal is days away for over 100 days. The war crossed the 100-day mark on Sunday. In that time, there have been multiple ceasefire announcements, multiple victory declarations, multiple claims that Iran was on the verge of signing. And in that same time, Iran has fired missiles at U.S. bases, kept the Strait of Hormuz closed, launched attacks on Israel, and now shot down an American Apache helicopter with a drone. At what point does the pattern speak for itself? Because the Apache was not a provocative asset. It was not conducting a strike. It was patrolling. It was doing exactly what American forces are supposed to do under the terms of the ceasefire and the blockade. And Iran shot it down anyway. That is not a miscalculation. That is a message. And the message says that Iran does not believe the ceasefire applies to them the same way the White House believes it does. This is the second confirmed loss of a crewed American aircraft to Iranian fire since the war began in February. The first was a drone. Now it's an Apache, a 2-seat attack helicopter armed with a 30mm chain gun and capable of carrying Hellfire missiles. This is not a small escalation. This is Iran reaching up and taking down one of America's most capable close combat aircraft. And it happened over the Strait of Hormuz, the exact body of water that the entire ceasefire is supposed to be about. Because the deal on the table, the deal Trump says is almost signed, the deal that Hegseth declared would follow the decisive military victory, requires Iran to reopen the strait. The strait that Iran just shot an American helicopter over. Here is what Trump's response options look like right now. Option 1 is a targeted strike, a precision hit on the Iranian asset or location that launched the drone. This is the most contained response, and the one most likely to avoid full war restart. Option 2 is a broader strike package, hitting multiple Iranian military targets simultaneously as a show of force. This is what happened during Operation Epic Fury and Operation Midnight Hammer. Option 3 is doing nothing publicly and demanding concessions at the negotiating table, accepting the downing as the price of keeping peace talks alive. Trump's language on Truth Social makes Option 3 almost impossible. He said must respond. Walking that back now would be the most dramatic public reversal of his presidency on military matters. But here is the part that should terrify every American watching this. Trump also said this last week. If Iran killed U.S. troops, that would be a good reason to restart the war. The pilots survived, but Iran still shot the helicopter down. Does that cross the line or not? Trump hasn't clarified. And every second that passes without clarification is a second where Iran is watching, Hezbollah is watching, Israel is watching, Russia is watching, and China is watching to see whether the United States actually responds, or whether must respond turns into will monitor the situation. Pete Hegseth is nowhere to be found publicly. The man who stood at the Pentagon on April 8th and declared decisive military victory, the man who said Iran begged for the ceasefire, the man who said American troops would be hanging around to ensure compliance, has not appeared before cameras. The Pentagon has not held a press briefing. The White House press secretary has not taken questions. The only statement from the U.S. government is a Truth Social post. That is not wartime leadership. That is a social media post about an act of war. And here is the accountability question that Congress should be asking right now, that the press should be demanding right now, that the American people deserve answered right now. Why was an Apache helicopter in a hot zone with insufficient protection from Iranian drone threats? Because the U.S. military has known for months that Iran uses drones aggressively in and around the Strait of Hormuz. The AH-64 Apache is an extraordinary aircraft, but it was not designed to operate as a solo patrol asset in an active conflict zone against a country that has demonstrated both the capability and the willingness to use drones against American targets. Who authorized that patrol configuration? What were the rules of engagement? Was there air cover? Was there electronic countermeasure support? These are not rhetorical questions. These are the questions that a congressional hearing should be convening to answer right now. Instead, we have a Truth Social post. We have 2 pilots in stable condition, thank God. And we have a president who says he must respond without saying how, when, or what the response means for 330 million Americans, who are now one decision away from watching this war escalate into something no ceasefire announcement can walk back. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz is the single most important factor in whether this conflict ends or explodes. 20% of the world's oil moves through that water. Energy prices are already elevated. The American economy is already feeling the pressure. The midterm elections are in November. And right now, over that water, Iran just demonstrated that it is willing to shoot down American military aircraft even while peace talks are supposedly in their final stages. That tells you everything about where the ceasefire actually stands. It tells you everything about what Iran believes the consequences of escalation are, and it tells you everything about the gap between the victory declarations in Washington and the reality on the ground, in the air, and over the Strait of Hormuz. Stay with us. This story is moving by the minute. When Trump's response comes, we will cover it immediately. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next update. Because in the next few hours, the decision made in the White House will determine whether the Middle East steps back from the edge or goes over it.